They're not written in computer language, they're written in DNA language. But apart from that, they're really very similar. They also say, copy me. They're also the bare minimum sort of program to get themselves copied. There's one further difference, which is that computer viruses are written by people, whereas DNA viruses arise by natural selection. Those strings of DNA that just happen to mean the instruction, copy me, those strings of DNA are the ones that will happen, that will tend to spread around. Once again, they appear pointless to us, but once again, what seems pointless to us is not the point. They're there because they're there, because they're there, because they're there. Now, viruses, whether they're made of DNA or computer instructions, have things made very cushy for them. There is ready-made copying machinery already in the world. In the case of DNA viruses, that ready-made copying machinery is our cells. In the case of computer viruses, it's computers, aided by people carting disks around, constituting a kind of paradise for a self-copying computer program. But where does all this lovely copying machinery come from? It doesn't just happen, it has to be made. In the case of computer viruses, it's made by humans. In the case of DNA viruses, it's the cells of other creatures. And who makes those other creatures? Those humans and elephants and hippos whose cells make life so easy for viruses? Well, the answer is that other self-copying DNA makes it, makes those creatures. The DNA that belongs to us humans, us hippos, us elephants. So what are big creatures like us and trees? What are big creatures for? For whose benefit are they? Well, from the virus's point of view, they think we're put in the world for virus's benefit. But that's not a very satisfactory answer because it doesn't explain why we should bother to be there in the first place. So once again, we have to shift our perspective, shift our point of view. So let's go back to the computer viruses to look for an answer. Writing a computer virus program is child's play. Any fool can do it, which is why the silly little twerps who do have nothing to be proud of. But imagine something like a computer virus, which instead of having a ready-made computer already set up to obey its instructions, had to start from scratch. Now that's more of a challenge. It couldn't just say, copy me, because there's nothing there to do the copying. To be truly self-copying, in a world without ready-made computing and duplicating machines handed to it on a plate, our computer program would have to be a lot more complicated. It would have to say, make the machinery needed to copy me. And before that, it would have to say, make the parts with which to make the machinery that you need to copy me. And before that, it would have to say, gather the raw materials that you need to make the parts, etc., etc. Now, this more elaborate program needs a name, and I'm going to call it the Total Self-Copying Program. The Total Self-Copying Program has to have control over more than just an ordinary computer. It's got to have a hand. It's got to have something like an industrial robot to pick things up and manipulate them, because it's got to assemble something like itself. Here's an industrial robot picking things up and dropping them into a box. It's very similar to the kind of industrial robot that's used in factories for making cars. And if you can have a factory to make cars like this, you could have a factory to make robots exactly like itself. But that's not enough, because this robot can only pick up the things that are within reach. In order to run our total self-copying program, it's got to be able to move around the world to pick up its raw materials. It's got to have something like legs. In fact, it would have to have something like this. This is Robug 2 from the Portsmouth Polytechnic. It has 4 legs. It looks a bit like an insect. It can climb up a vertical wall, as you see, because it's got sucker legs. And it's fairly clever about what it does if it finds an obstacle. I'm going to try and tease it in a minute. I'm going to try and put my hand under its back leg and see what it does. Now watch it. Trying to find another place to put its leg. There. Okay. Okay, trying to kick me out of the way. Right. There we are. Robots like this, in fact, direct descendants of this robot, are actually very useful, because there are some places where humans dare not go. like radioactive places, nuclear power stations. And robots like this are actually in use to go into nuclear power stations because they don't mind the radioactivity and do repairs that humans would never dare to do. Now, this robot has 4 brains, there, and there, but each one of those brains is controlling just the one leg. So it's doing a fairly low-level operation, like working out what to do if I put my hand under the foot. That controls the tactics of the individual legs. But the strategy of the whole robot is at present being controlled by a human outside through this cable. This is the real robot. The imaginary robot that we've been trying to talk about would do something other than that. And I'll go on talking about it when it stops, because it's now just reached the top, and I hate to think what would happen if it went on any higher. So thank you very much, Robug 2 and the Portsmouth Polytechnic. Well, Robug is a real robot, and it has been controlled by a human with a computer outside. But we were using it to stand in for our imaginary robot. And our imaginary robot would have its own onboard computer running a master program. And that master program would be the self-copying program. It would say, make a duplicate copy, not only of the program, but also of the apparatus necessary to duplicate the program. And it would do that by walking around the world, and it would have on its back the equivalent of the industrial robot with the hand and the eye that we saw in the film. So it would march around the world, picking up the bits that it needs in order to make a copy of itself. The master program would say, make a copy of the robot itself, and feed the same total self-copying program into the onboard computer. A self-duplicating robot, like we've been imagining, has never yet been built. It was discussed as an important theoretical possibility by John von Neumann, who could be called the father of the modern computer. But it has never been built. But wait a minute, what am I talking about? What on earth do I think this is? Or this? Or indeed me? Or any of us? These creatures walking around the world, see whether we can make this one walk. There we are. Now think of that stick insect as just the same as the robot we've just been imagining, not the one we've just been seeing, but the one we've just been imagining, with its own onboard computer, carrying around the instruction, walk around the world, pick up raw materials, eat plant material, use that plant material to make new robots just like this one. And then those ones will go out into the world and they will wander around picking up food, and they will be making new stick insects just like this one. And in every case, the object of the exercise is to pass on the program that does the instructing. Chameleon is the same, we are the same, an elephant is the same. This is fundamentally what a human or an elephant is. An elephant is a huge digression in a computer program written in DNA language. Our DNA builds its own self-copying machinery. This is what we are. We are machines built by DNA whose purpose is to make more copies of the same DNA. Well, that process is all very well once it starts, but how did it start originally? To answer that, we have to go back a very long way, very long time, more than 3,000 million years, perhaps as much as 4,000 million years.